Open up a new instance of Serum, or if you have it open, click on menu and initialize a new preset so you get the default saw wave. For this sound we're going to use both oscillators, so turn on oscillator B. For oscillator A I'm going to use a digital wavetable called Evil Long Race, and for oscillator B another one called Dist Dude. I'm gonna set the wavetable position for oscillator A to around 63 and for oscillator B around 105, but feel free to experiment with other sweet spots for your taste. Let's add 3 voices of unison to oscillator A with a slight detune of about 0.06 and a blend rate of 60%. Oscillator B then gets 5 voices of unison with just a slightly different detune and blending. Now go to the modulation matrix and let's assign the Chaos 1 control to the global master tuning, so the sound gets a bit of analog style pitch drifting. Of course, by default it's way too much, so we should turn down the output amount to just a bit below 10. For bass sounds, I also like to decrease global unison width to about 50, so the individual voices won't sit around the stereo space. And since we are creating a bass sound, let's drop both oscillators down by 2 octaves. Then enable the sub-oscillator with a rounded rectangle waveform and also set it to -2 octaves. The next step is adding some noise to the sound. Let's use the organic Shush1 noise waveform. Enable pitch tracking and set the pitch to -12, which means the noise will be pitched an octave lower than the note being played. Then it's time to set up the envelope. Add a little bit to the attack, just around 2 milliseconds. Then turn the sustain down to about -1 to 2 decibels and sharpen the curve so there is a more prominent beginning to each note. Then set the release time to about 300 milliseconds. Okay, let's turn down all oscillators volume to 0 and assign envelope 1 to all of them. So oscillator A should be at 100% and B should be a bit lower, somewhere around 80. The sub-oscillator should be around 25 and noise should be around 35. Now turn on the filter. The default MG low 12 dB filter is completely fine, just be sure to turn it on for all the oscillators. Leave the cutoff frequency as it is and boost the resonance just by a few percents. Also set the FAT value to about 25%. Now assign envelope 1 to the filter drive at about 25% so it has a nice warm boost at the beginning of every note. Next up, the warp section. Set the warp mode of oscillator A to FM from B and add some 12% to it or something like that. Then for oscillator B assign a remap 1 warp and click the edit icon to give it a custom waveform. Just pull this point all the way down, then double click to add a new point and pull that point all over to the upper left corner. And then smooth out that waveform by pulling the tension down to the second point in the grid from the bottom. Close the waveform and leave the remap amount at 0 because we are going to modulate it in a few seconds. Let's move over to the LFO section, select LFO 1 and set it to the same shape as the remap waveform. Now turn on envelope mode and set the rate to 2 bars. Then assign this LFO to the wavetable position of oscillator B with an amount of around 40. Then also assign the same LFO to the filter cutoff, set its modulation to single-sided and set an amount of 35 or something like that. Select LFO2 and give it the same shape, but with a much sharper tension. Set it to envelope mode and you can leave it at the default rate of 1/4. And then assign this LFO2 to oscillator A's warp amount with an amount of 20 and oscillator's A wavetable position with around -18. Now this very short FM boost and wavetable sweep will give a nice metallic clank to the beginning of each note. Okay, let's move on to LFO3 and give it a shark fin looking shape, something like this. Set it also to envelope mode and set the rate to 2 bars. Now assign LFO3 to the remapping of oscillator B with an amount just a bit higher than 20. Now this will create some extra movement on longer notes just after the other LFOs finished pulling back the filter cutoff and frequency modulation. Like that. Okay, now we're done with the oscillators, so let's move on to the FX section. First turn on hyper dimension, and we're not going to be using hyper at all, so pull it all back to 0. And for dimension, set a size of about 12% and a mix amount of 65. This will give you some nice extra space to the sound. Then enable distortion and set it to asymmetric with a drive of 30% and the full mix amount. Then enable the distortion filter and set it to pre-distortion with a frequency of about 1 kHz. Set the resonance to about 0.4 and also set the fader between low pass and band pass to about 8%. Then assign LFO1 to the distortion filter frequency with an amount of about 40 and LFO2 to the filter resonance with around 25. This will give another warm boost to the beginning of the sound, like this. Okay, turn on chorus. There's no need to change the default values here, you can leave them as they are and just pull the mix down to around 10% or something similar so the sound gets some extra stereo movement. Next, enable the compressor, set it to multiband, pull the threshold back to around -12 dB and set a rate of 1.7 to 1. We'll be using a relatively short attack, somewhere around 20 milliseconds, and a longer release of around 140 or so. And now our patch will sound a lot more beefy. Check it out. Okay, next add an EQ to the chain. Set the left side to high pass with a frequency of about 50 Hz. And the resonance of 55%. The right part should remain a high shelf at around 2.5 kHz. Leave the resonance and gain as they are. Instead, assign LFO2 to the high shelf frequency with an amount of 25 or so, and also to the gain of the high shelf with a single-sided modulation and an amount of about 15. So now you get even more extra punch in the higher frequencies when a note starts playing. So yeah, now the sound is almost done. It sounds a bit too sharp, so add the filter at the end of the chain to properly control the higher frequencies. Use the MG Low 12 dB filter, just like in the oscillator section. Set the cutoff to about 2.5 kHz, resonance at about 10%, and the filter drive at 25%. Then assign LFO1 to this filter's cutoff with an amount of 40, and we're done. So this is the sound. Feel free to experiment with any other wavetable positions, waveforms. Since this is a bass patch, you might want to use it in monophonic mode, but personally I think this particular patch really shines when two notes are played together an octave apart. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked what you've heard, please drop it a like, subscribe to the channel, and also make sure to leave a comment if you have any questions, general comments, or if you use this sound in any of your productions, because I'll be happy to check them out. Thanks again, and see you all in the next video.